white people. You know what makes us awesome? No, I don't mean the language or the culture or even the fact that when we do genocide, we're still dressed to the nines. Yep, that's pretty bad. So when I say white people, I mean the good white people. And this is so not helping my case. The ones that understand their history has value and the world is not as black and white as the class of uppity academics make it out to be, as they indoctrinate a new generation of idiots into thinking the only reason for white people being successful is exploitation, and not because of, developing skills in different parts of the world, having to deal with, say, issues of climate and territory in terms of farming and warfare, governance, philosophy, technological advancement. No, of course not. None of that. It's not as though you can look at the Americas and go, where did bourbon come from, for example? Well, the Scottish and the Irish brought over their whiskey-making skills, but because barley didn't produce a good yield in the new climate and the natives already cultivated corn, they used that instead. They didn't have the peat to use in the smoking process as they do with Scotch, so instead they tried to compensate for this by charring the barrels, and that is how you get the flavor profile of bourbon today. You can look at, say, beer and milk production, and you'll find a lot of the settlers have German ancestry. Look at the governing structure. It's from the Greeks and the British and the Romans. Looking at some of the explorers, Portuguese and Spanish. Look at South Africa, the Afrikaans farmers, die Boeren. They're Dutch. Our metric system comes from the French. Our classical composers, German, Russian, Austrian, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, Tchaikovsky. Austria especially, much of our great arts and intellectual heavyweights come from Austria. Of course, that's history and facts, and therefore inconvenient to the easy anti-white narrative espoused by these spastic simpletons. None of what I just mentioned matters, it's just our melanin account and our scheming evil ways. What we did, right, was we went around the world, took the smartest people from other cultures, made them give us their best and brightest ideas, presumably through coercion or bribery or something, and then we just killed them. Because ideas can't be replicated. No. That's all concentrated in the heads of a few wise men, you see. And if you can off them, then all of civilization will collapse because the rest of the population are thick as fuck. That's actually what anti-Westerners think happened when the white man left Europe. They think Europe has never done anything right and the rest of the world has never done anything wrong, which is, of course, an absurdly ignorant view of, just about everything, really. Oh, by the way, leftists, none of you should ever be allowed to travel because you're just LARPing as colonialists engaging in cultural appropriation. That's a rule that I've just made up. Anyway, what I want to do, again much for my own amusement, is use progressive talking points and subvert their sly, shrouded meanings into something more tangible and realistic. What makes white people so fantastic, and yes, I will say that, I am white and there is nothing you can do about it. Besides, I'm not going to be one of these cucked little bitches and apologize for the actions of my ancestors. It's not my fault mine were better and yours sucked. Besides, if you think I'm to feel guilt, then by that logic, I can also take credit and feel proud of what they achieved, in between enslaving and pillaging the shit out of your ancestors. We'd be here all day if I went through a list of them, so, instead, I will boil it down to one I think is most impactful, which is a certain cultural trait that we don't do that a sizable chunk of other people actually engage in. We, contrary to mainstream talking points, actually like and appreciate diversity. And I don't mean the phony diversity the progressives preach about, which, let's be honest, is nothing but window dressing, branding, sloganeering, to show diversity of appearance when in reality, you just have a legion of multicolored NPCs relegated into all thinking the exact same way, which is not exactly diversity, that's just bizarre cultural baptism. No, we value an entirely different variable of diversity. See, because our culture has a very strong foundation built on the desire for knowledge and success, we see information in a binary manner, black and white. A lot of other cultures have this weird stigma against learning from other cultures and will chastise each other for it. We don't really do that. As a matter of fact, we get praise for learning something outside of what we're familiar with. For some reason, we consider that exotic. For example, if you can speak Japanese, no white person is going to hassle you for that. They'll consider it pretty cool. Contrast that with, say, certain black Americans who will give each other grief simply for speaking English properly. They'll get bullied for what they call talking white. I wonder if they know they're actually praising white people by doing this. You're associating a superior grammatical ability with other people, and then condemning your own to lower achievements by retarding their progress through social alienation, for simply wanting to develop a skill that literally everyone else in society values except you, and you're the lowest on the socioeconomic ladder. I'm a right stickler for effectiveness, and there is absolutely no utility whatsoever in continuing this cultural practice. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's a suicidal dead end. You want an uncomfortable reality? That cultural trait is known the world over. The second people hear that bastardized broken English, a few highly accurate, prejudicial stereotypes come to mind. Raised in the streets, broken home, single mother, prison sentence. Again, we don't do this because it makes zero sense to do so. We simply look at a skill set for what it is, means we can use to achieve something that's useful. As a result, we incorporate the useful things from other cultures for our own purposes as we build our societies. Bear in mind, though, we were not always like this. We used to have empires, for heaven's sakes, knocking the tooth and nail out of each other for centuries. In the early years of the previous century, you had a lot of prejudice among Europeans in the United States. You had the Irish, the Italians, Polish Jews, for example, the difference between East and Western Europe. You actually had the teaching of eugenics in the universities at the time. And who pioneered the eugenics movement? Oh yeah, the progressives. And then you had the First and Second World War. It's just now you've got this bizarre anti-white bollocks that's pushed a lot of white people together against the wall under the auspice of white man bad. And they're looking at each other going, okay, apparently we're friends now, according to this horde of miserably skinny middle-class toffs. Which is pretty funny, considering when the left talks about America, they'll go, oh, we're a nation of immigrants. Yes, we agree, you dumbasses, except many of those immigrants brought skill sets with them from different areas of the world that were useful. In a time when America is in its infancy and it's still growing, it's much more rural and it needs manpower. Now, you two-faced sociopaths, you wish to boil down illegal immigrants into slave labor and lemmings for your own political cause, while calling everyone else who wants to learn from immigrants culturally appropriating. Do you see how stupid that looks? Explain to me how the hell you bank on inclusive in your doctrine when this interaction is demonized in your worldview. That makes zero sense. Again, this is not something we ever do. And that attitude of reciprocity and skill sharing we welcome from other cultures. If you want to learn something from us, it shows you value a skill and trait that helps facilitate integration into the Western Hemisphere, unless you're in the social sciences, in which case tank through Harvard Yard. But typically speaking, if you show that desire, you're welcomed by the good white people. But the bad white people will simply hurl racial epithets and call you a white supremacist for simply not obeying their German-based doctrine, which is dripping with enough irony to induce type 2 diabetes. And that's all for today. Until next time.